Everyone. To start out the week, I want to examine paper 3 for nothing more than the CSC form. What you're learning in this class, whether it's paper 1 or paper 6 and everywhere in between, I'm looking for CSC form. What is good? What is going on structurally underneath all those words that makes your argument be strong, right? Makes your reader feel very confident in how you're saying things. That's what happens when you pay attention to the underlying structure. So Nina Mosher has decided to let us examine her paper. It was her paper 3, but we're going to look at it for her CSC structure this week. I'm also going to point out some other things I noticed in it because while this is an excellent paper, it's not perfect, right? No paper really is. So let's look at what's really good about it and what's not so great about it. I added this word introduction here just a moment ago, but this is what her paper originally looked like. So for your paper 5s, I do want you to try to put some headings in there. So for an introduction, it's a level 1 heading, and level 1 headings go in the center, just like that, and they are bold, so it would look like that. Now, this is confusing because a lot of people are putting their titles here. And both are right. Both are right. So let's say you wanted to put a title here instead of a level 1 heading. That totally works. But if you start subdividing the content, actually, and let's say this is your intro, and you start subdividing the content, I'm just going to call this something simple like body. Now, putting your title above the intro starts to seem very, very strange. So if we put art in ed, that's like a title, a level 1, and then going. So that's a little bit strange. So what I ask students to do is actually put the title just over here, just off to the side under all this other information right here. It just makes it more clear for the reader that that is the title. So this format, we run into trouble when we try to do a format, a small assignment format. That's what this is when you have your small header and your full header, and you're trying to do a title and you're trying to subdivide. So for your paper 5, you can do it like this. You can put the title over here in your full header, and you can center your level 1 headings like normal, like here. The reason we run into trouble when we're doing small assignment format is because it doesn't have a cover page. You're going to learn cover pages for paper 6. I'm going to teach you those in MLA and APA format. And they're great when you start subdividing arguments and you have a main paper title. But for now, for paper 5, you're still going to use a small assignment format, and you can just shove your title over here in the full header. Moving on. So Nina did something very interesting in her paper. She actually introduced 2 research projects to analyze in the introduction and then again throughout the paper. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, but it is a bit confusing because the purpose of paper 3 was to analyze one research project, and tell your audience whether it was a good or bad project for your specific thesis statement. So in a way, Nina is a bit off topic here. Let's look at what she did and see if we can identify the elements of good CSC format and maybe some stuff that went astray in the introduction. So her very first sentence seems to be her thesis, but it is really weak and passive. I believe her thesis statement could have been stated stronger, and it is stated stronger in other places throughout the semester. She writes, many people are convinced making art is for artists because they think art is something that requires talent, but art is more than making a beautiful painting or a detailed drawing. Okay, so I don't think anyone would disagree with this, that art is more than the process of creation, right? We can all say to ourselves, yeah, it has an audience. There's entire galleries, there's entire museums devoted to people looking at it. So of course it's more than making it, it's also viewing it, it's also the history of it, it's also the cultural influence. I mean, there's really a lot of things that art is. And so I think what she's meaning to say is art has more benefits beyond the creating and the viewing. There's benefits, and I think that's more argumentative, especially when you get into some medical science surrounding the benefits. So this thesis is stated a bit weak. In addition to that, she might have stated the thesis stronger, and before that started out with a hook. A hook. She could have cited a study, maybe found the most profound study available, a statistic from it saying that art has the ability to affect people medically, as found in Johnson et al. Or something. But she didn't. So I would advise a hook and making the thesis stronger. Then we move on to I'm interested in the many benefits art can provide since I'm going to be an art educator. Great. That gives us a sense of her personal investment in the topic. I really like that. For instance, making art can help people reduce anxiety. That's a great lead in to a study that she's going over that talks about anxiety. However, this is really clear to me as an instructor that this might be one of her claims in her final research paper. And I didn't want you to list those claims in your paper 3s because that was confusing. It works as a lead in, so I don't think it would be confusing to someone who was just reading this for the first time. But I think it would be confusing in the sense of what are you going to talk about next? Are you going to focus on anxiety or are you going to focus on the study itself? So that could have been clarified more. So now let's dive into the studies that she introduces, which is odd again because I expected one to be introduced, not two. So she goes into the study by Nancy Curry, who is an undergraduate student. I love this because it's being very honest about the student's credentials, even though undergraduate work is definitely not looked upon with the same authority as expert opinions. However, this student does have a professor backing her up, so it gives it a little bit more credibility. So this shows some honesty, some ethos in her work. And then she goes into a bit about what the study included. Notice the good MLA format. She has the page number when she's done doing the paraphrase, and at the beginning of the paraphrase, she introduces the authors. She also tells us it's a study. It's not an article, it's not a journal piece, it's not an opinion piece, it's a study. So this is good information right here. And then we go right into another study. So I was a bit confused. She gives us the title of this one. She didn't give us the title of the first one. That's a bit inconsistent. She also gives us then the lead researcher. We know that this lead researcher led a research team of more than 3 people, because 4 or more people, whenever you have them, looks like this, et al. And then she goes into what her claims are for this paper. So this article is a quality resource for research because it has adequate supports for the conclusion and it's free from distortion. Okay, so here's what's working for this. Very clear introductions of 2 studies. Why there's 2, we're not quite sure, but very clear introduction of 2. Weak thesis, but still, nonetheless, a thesis. Great transition from the thesis into talking about the studies. Clear claims. In her claim, she said this article has adequate support. She starts out by talking about the adequate support, reminds the readers of what she's about to talk about. And then when she ends it, she talks about the adequate support. Fantastic CSC form. Now, if all the evidence in the middle focuses on supports, she's done her job. For first, this article, now this, she introduced 2. We don't know which one she's talking about necessarily until we start reading some of the stuff. So that's confusing. That could have been clarified. This article has sufficient support for its claims because the researchers use multiple methods to determine and compare results. So the researchers themselves are supporting the work by using different methods to come up with the same results, and that's giving it more credibility. That's really good. This is deep thinking here. It explains how these methods have been used successfully in other studies. To determine how patients are affected, the researchers use 2 different methods, the ESAS and the STAI. The ESAS stress score is acquired by, now she's explaining some of this terminology in her paper. Excellent. Always explain if you have confusing terminology. Not only did the researchers use 2 different ways to determine the results of art therapy, but they also explained that the 2 methods have been validated by many other studies. Secondly, the researchers use 5 different methods to compare the results of their data. She's diving really deep into how the research was conducted. This is a very intelligent CSC paragraph. I was very impressed by it. I'm going to just take a moment. You can pause it here and read the rest.